In the last couple of years, I played a lot of games that were analogous in some way to Starfield. Cyberpunk's Phantom Liberty DLC, The Witcher 3, and Avowed were each great examples of the different design philosophies behind this extremely broad genre we call RPG. Stalker 2 was an excellent example of open-world exploration-focused gameplay. Deus Ex showcased what a game that respects a player's ingenuity and curiosity can do. No Man's Sky's Voyagers update showed off a different approach to a space game and what shipbuilding can look and feel like in that context. Oblivion Remastered reminded me that there are things to be enjoyed about Bethesda's games, and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 showed me that there still could be. And finally, The Outer Worlds 2 offered up a very solid space RPG experience and really showed what a developer can do when they learn from their mistakes and iterate on their work. Now that last one is really important in the context of Starfield and its DLC. The Outer Worlds was a very flawed game that missed the mark for a lot of people, myself included. Even so, I have a lot of respect for what Obsidian is doing these days, so I was very open to playing Outer Worlds 2. When they came out the gate swinging with a trailer that acknowledged their failures and promised to do better, my respect and interest only grew. And ultimately, I felt that my patience was rewarded because while The Outer Worlds 2 is not a perfect game, there were so many things that they improved upon from their first go-around. That's what it means to iterate and to learn and to grow. You might still make mistakes, but you learn from them. You don't stubbornly hold on to things that didn't work, you take a new approach and try to find something that will. You build upon what was done before and reach new heights in doing so. All of these games I've brought up got me thinking about Starfield in some way. It got me thinking about developer intentions and the reason that a player might enjoy one game over another. And it got me thinking a lot about iteration, because so many of the games I brought up were not the first in their series, or the original release of the game itself. Again, we're talking about X-Title 2, or 3, X-Title DLC, a major update to X-Title, X-Title HD 2.8 Final Chapter Prologue. What? Many of the games I brought up are examples of developers learning from their mistakes and coming out the other end better for it. If that line of thinking sounds familiar, then you may be remembering the conclusion to my video on Starfield's base game, where I implored Bethesda to learn from their mistakes and iterate on their work. Now, if you haven't seen that video already, I recommend that you watch that first, but you do not need to in order to understand this one. All you need to know is that I was thoroughly unimpressed by Starfield. I was unimpressed by Bethesda's creativity, problem solving, and thoughtfulness. I was unimpressed by their ability to take and act on criticism. In my conclusion, I expressed hope that things would change. Bethesda's reaction to criticism, which is to say they ignore it, is somewhat understandable when you realize that their games have always been critical and commercial successes in spite of their failings. But Starfield was their first game to see such a lukewarm response from players, not counting Fallout 76, which was a very different style of game. So I was hopeful that it might be a watershed moment for them and teach them to face the music. At the same time, I also took a note from myself and tried to consider the criticism I have received. It's been well over a year since I released my Starfield trilogy, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about it since. I read a lot of comments, and I've seen a lot of different perspectives, and at some point I did start to wonder if I was too hard on Starfield. I wondered if I played this game with an uncharitable mindset. You know, I played The Outer Worlds 2 with a lot of respect for Obsidian and a desire to see them do well, which was very different from how I felt about Bethesda when I decided to play Starfield, where I had very little faith in them. It would be fair to say that a mindset like that would lead one to pick out flaws more easily. I thought a lot about why I play certain games, and I did my best to remind myself that not every game can be a life-changing experience that scoops up game awards, nor do I expect that. Ultimately, all I really need from a game is for it to be fun. I like games that are more than just fun, but simply entertaining me for a solid chunk of hours is good enough. That's why I like Borderlands 4 and Oblivion. Not fantastic games, but they are entertaining. So going into Shattered Space, I tried to remind myself that some games are only okay, and that's totally okay. I tried to set aside my existing feelings about Starfield and approach it anew. I tried to play it with an open mind and a desire to enjoy. I asked myself if I was too hard on Starfield and wondered if my previous videos on it were justified. Unfortunately, while I am very open to criticism and always do my best to learn from what I receive, Bethesda is more like a petulant child. Shattered Space is weird because it would be wrong to say that Bethesda did not respond to criticism. It would be wrong to say that Shattered Space did not iterate on Starfield. It would be wrong to say that Bethesda did not attempt to remedy Starfield's problems, but holy fuck. It would also not be wrong to say that Bethesda did the absolute bare minimum. Shattered Space is, in what is probably an unpopular opinion, some of Starfield's best content, and it's still massively disappointing. Shattered Space began when I jumped into a system and discovered a space station sending out distress signals, but warning listeners not to go on board. I elected to ignore that because who is this in distress individual to tell me what to do? They're in distress. What do they know? On board, I discovered glowing white goo walls growing everywhere, and the station was infested with teleporting phantoms that shot on sight, as ghosts often do. I've never met a poltergeist that wasn't strapped. This station made me realize how absent Starfield is of zero-gravity dungeons, which is a shame because they're more fun than the basic dungeons throughout the game. The addition of a third dimension for movement makes maneuvering in a firefight more engaging and somewhat makes up for Starfield's poor enemy design. Not really, but kinda. It's not perfect though. Starfield commits what I consider to be one of the cardinal sins of a space game, which is that there is up in zero gravity. This annoys me because I'm a massive loser and I will happily acknowledge that, but come on, man! It's zero gravity! Why am I always oriented the same way if there's no force pulling me in a specific direction? My soul is not weighed down by gravity. If you want to do zero G, you gotta let me spin around and face whatever direction I want. You just have to. After wandering the ship and shooting at ghosts, I slowly pieced together that the ghosts were once inhabitants of the station, and that they lost their minds and turned aggressive after getting a taste of that sweet, sweet ectoplasm. This led to the deaths of more of the station's populace, those that didn't vibe with the whole white tablecloth thing. They were made to vibe with it, by being killed. Through further investigation and ghost hunting, I discovered that the station belongs to House Va'ruun, the weird snake cult and the third great power in the settled system, alongside the United Colonies and Freestar Collective. The station manager was able to program the station to warp back to House Va'ruun's home system if the power could be reset, but seems to have been unable to do that himself. So I did it, because I'm the main character. Sure enough, the Snake Station jumped right into Snake Space, and the slithery space surveyors suggested that I settle down for a surface-side symposium. Now, I was a bit hesitant to meet with them because all of my previous encounters with House Va'ruun have gone undiplomatically. But it's best not to judge a group based on the actions of a violent few, so I figured I ought to give them a chance.
Hold very still, and choose your words carefully. They will determine how long you live.
Fucking dirty snakes. I should mention that I'm not traveling alone this time around. I talked at length in my last video about how little I cared about Starfield's companions, and specifically criticized how impactless Sam's death was because I just didn't care about him at all. For whatever reason, I just really struggled to connect with his drywall personality. Some viewers responded to that by saying that it was actually my fault because I didn't take the time to get to know any of them. I chose not to run around with a companion during my playthrough, and according to them, that's why I didn't care about them. If I'd gotten to know them, I would feel very different. Now, one could respond to that by saying that Bethesda failed to make the companion characters interesting enough for me to want to spend time with. Each of them got a mission where I was forced to hang out with them for some length of time, but I didn't come away from any of them with a desire to spend more time with that individual. One could say that this is still on Bethesda because they dropped the ball in that regard, but let's not split hairs over this. However you want to argue this point, I decided to see if those commenters were on to something. So, for the DLC, I chose to bring Andreja along, with no ulterior motive whatsoever. I just really wanted the chance to get to know her. Andreja attempted to defuse the situation, but got nowhere and was ultimately ignored, as is often the case with companions in this game. Before I could receive a snake-sized hole in my esophagus, another one of those specters showed up and distracted everybody. Unlike the rest that attacked on sight, this one made a plea to the Big Daddy Snake before fucking off to the nearest GameStop or wherever else ghosts hang out. Surprisingly though, I was the only one that heard any of this. The only serpent in the room that didn't want to bite me explained that we just saw the ghost of Inosko Va'ruun, House Va'ruun's leader known as the Speaker. He explains that Inosko is working on an experiment in their capital city of Dazra when something went catastrophically wrong. Dazra got a little exploded, and now they have violent ghosts running around. The exception being Inosko's ghost, who hasn't attacked anyone. They've been unable to communicate with him and find out what's going on. However, for whatever reason, I can hear Inosko and potentially communicate with him. I can't wait to find out why that is. Certainly Bethesda isn't going to just leave it unexplained. Since I can communicate with the big snake in charge, Malibor, that's this guy, he's Malibor, believes that I can save them from their ghost disaster and asks for my help, on one condition. He'll only let me help him if I join his cult. Let me rephrase that in case the strangeness of it didn't dawn on you. Malibor will graciously allow me to provide him with necessary and life-saving help that no one else can provide on the condition that I join his snake cult. Now, of course, I didn't want to, for a couple reasons. The first was a role-playing reason. My character is a part of the Church of the Sanctum Universum. House Va'ruun is a religious cult. It would go against my belief system to join up with them. The second and probably bigger reason is that every time I've met someone from House Va'ruun, they've tried to shoot me, including these guys. My perception of House Va'ruun is that they are fanatic snake worshippers that are out to eradicate the non-believers. I don't really know much about them beyond that. Now, of course, Malibor happily hand-waves this problem away by telling me that the snakes I've met until now have all been zealots, and they're all wacky and weird, and we don't hang out with them, so just ignore that. Which is just a terrible explanation. Sure, okay, I understand that there are crazy members of any group that aren't a good representation of the group as a whole. Not every Catholic is a hate-spewing white supremacist. Some of them are very chill. But Malibor's blasé attitude towards the zealots is a bit hard to accept. To my memory, I met exactly 2 Va'ruun NPCs in the base game that didn't try to kill me, and one of them would have if there weren't prison bars between us. Malibor has a lot more work to do to convince me that the zealots aren't representative of their cult as a whole, because I don't exactly see House Va'ruun doing anything to distance themselves from these people. Where are the Va'ruun diplomats that are trying to maintain peace between the other factions in this universe? Since I felt pretty unconvinced, I told Marlborough that I wouldn't join the cult, and he told me to come back if I changed my mind. And that's it. You don't get to do the DLC you paid $30 for if you won't join the cult. House Va'ruun always felt weird in base game Starfield. And not because of the Snake Scientology stuff. After my 70s some odd hour playthrough, I came away viewing House Va'ruun as just another enemy faction. It wasn't until I did research on the lore of the game for the sake of my video that I came to understand that House Va'ruun is a much bigger deal than they appeared to be. My perception of the settled systems was that it was under the control of the competing United Colonies in Freestar Collective, but this was wrong. House Va'ruun is the 3rd major faction that is leading this star system. I believed that House Va'ruun was just a collective of scattered crazy people, but this was wrong too. House Va'ruun controls at least one system, possibly more. They have entire planets to their name and hold sway over major decisions that affect the other 2 governments. So why did they have such a tiny presence in the base game? Sure, they may not be as far-reaching and powerful as either of the other 2 factions, and they are known to practice an isolationist policy, but it's really a sign of poor world building that I came away viewing them as nothing but dudes to be shot. Ultimately, I ended up feeling like House Va'ruun was just cut content, and this interaction with Malibor may be evidence of that. It's weird, if you ask me, that you cannot do the content you paid $30 for unless you're willing to join House Va'ruun, especially with this game advertising itself as a role-playing game. I have to break character to participate in this content. My character wouldn't do this. It makes a lot more sense if you view House Va'ruun as an optional, joinable faction that was awkwardly carved out of the base game. You can't do the Ryujin questline without becoming a Ryujin employee, and that makes sense because it's optional content and you're going to be working for them. That's the whole deal. But here, I paid real money to do this questline, and I had to break character in order to do it because... Marlboro tells me that it's just how they operate and he won't go against it, but... Dude, you're facing a life-threatening disaster and I'm the one guy that can help you with it. That's the time to be flexible. You need me. I don't need you. I don't have to help you. I have no attachment to your people or desire to protect them. They're just a bunch of crazy people that always shoot at me as far as I'm concerned. Is helping you the right thing to do? Yeah. Is joining a cult an acceptable cost to achieving that goal? I don't know. I wouldn't join Scientology knowing that I could help them avoid a disaster, not when I know how they treat their members. So great, I joined the snake cult because I didn't have a choice in the matter. Andresia, what do you think about all this?
Here, I have something for you.
They took me through their little initiation ritual, and I gotta say, having waypoints telling me where to go all the time kinda defeats the purpose of putting me in a maze. I kinda bullshitted my way through the magic snake cave, which made the magic snake lady angry, but I was allowed to join anyway because main character. Andresia didn't have to join House Waroon. She can hang out in their city and help out with their problems without joining, but not me. Considering they've got a ping pong table in their holy place, maybe they just don't take themselves all that seriously. I don't know how snakes play ping pong though. Maybe they wrap their tails around the paddle. Marlboro explained that whatever experiment Anaska was conducting caused a massive explosion that wiped out most of their city and population. Marlboro is part of the city's council, who are leading the people through this disaster in Anaska's place, but they've hit a snake snag in their attempts to remedy the situation. Anaska's experiment left an impenetrable energy field around the only building that survived the explosion, the scaled Citadel. Get it? 'Cause snakes have scales. Ekris, a scientist who was working on Anaska's experiment, but who happens to be outside the Citadel at the time of the disaster, was working on a way to breach the barrier. However, his work stalled because the Great Houses wouldn't cooperate. House Waroon is made up of 3 great houses that maintain different parts of their society, and when their people needed them most, they decided to stop helping for various stupid reasons. It's my job to get them off their snake asses and back to work. We're going to go through these houses in the order that I did them, which conveniently happens to be in order from least to most insane reason to stop helping. The first house I talked to was House Dul'kehf, and their elder's reason for not helping was actually totally understandable. He wanted to help by passing on some potentially useful information, but everyone was too busy fighting amongst themselves to listen to what he had to say. Now that the main character is here, he's happy to pass on what he knows. Which isn't much, but it's not nothing either. All he knows is that Anaska was looking into something called a vortex interlock, and that he may have found something at a nearby dam. So I'm headed to the dam to find out if there's any additional clues there. Since we're now out into the world, this is a good time to talk about one of the big changes Shattered Space made to the gameplay loop. Now, in the base game, for a quest like this, you would just hop in your ship and fly wherever you needed to go. However, since Starfield doesn't have actual surface-to-space travel, what this involved was staring at a loading screen until you automatically fast-traveled where you needed to go, which really hurt the Bethesda gameplay loop experience because one of the strongest things previous Bethesda games had was the experience of traveling through and exploring the world you were in. This aspect was entirely absent from Starfield due to fast traveling being your primary means of travel. 11 months after Starfield came out, Bethesda released an update that added a car to the game so you could more quickly traverse the barren planets. That's what they came up with after 11 months of the game being out. You know, when Elite Dangerous introduced the drivable rover, they required you to attach a module that took up one of your ship's slots that the car would sit in. That way there was a logical place that the car was coming from and returning to. No Man's Sky requires you to build a dock on your base for vehicles to spawn from, then a module on your freighter that will allow it to teleport to your location as needed. Starfield's car just sits there next to your ship wherever it lands. Don't ask me how it got there. I don't know. The car is okay. The handling is horrible. It kind of feels like driving a hockey puck on ice. It's very slippery and slidey. But whatever, the car works and saves me time, and that's good enough for me. But what's interesting is how the inclusion of the car seems to have necessitated a change in the core design for Shattered Space. As I mentioned before, we're headed to a nearby dam to do some investigating. In the base game, this would entail hopping in your ship and staring at a lovely loading screen. Shattered Space is different, though. Here, the dam is a short distance from the city in an undiscovered location. That means you can't just fast travel there, you have to walk or drive there. Now, as simple as that is, this is genuinely a big improvement to the Starfield experience because now you're not just jumping from one destination to the next. There is travel time, downtime, things to see and get distracted by. I'm not going to pretend it's a massive improvement. Ultimately, this is a very boring map. It's disheartening to know that this is the only planet in the game that gets this treatment, and it's not even particularly interesting. Do you guys like purple? Because you're going to be looking at a lot of purple when you're out here, like way too much purple. It's an assault on the senses, the way it's colored. But that journey between objectives is a legitimate improvement, no matter how minor. It makes the world feel more interesting and more grounded. The other cities in the game feel like they were just plopped somewhere randomly. There are no other towns or buildings around New Atlantis. No power stations, depots, roads, nothing.
Okay, I missed the mark a little bit here. There are obviously buildings around New Atlantis. You can see them right there in the background. When I wrote that part of the script, I was kind of going off of what I remembered rather than actually checking, and I should have checked. But I would still commend Shattered Space over the base game because Dazra feels more intentional. These things feel like they're just kind of slapped out there, whereas Dazra feels like there's some cohesion to it, and I'll explain why in a second.
Dazra is different. There are things around this city. Farms, dams, shrines, roads leading from it. And it makes it more believable and interesting to explore. At the dam, I was assaulted by ghosts once again, and this enemy type is really awesome if you happen to do a stealth build like me. Because they will just spawn in suddenly, without warning, and will know exactly where you are immediately, even if you happen to be crouching when they show up. Look, I'm all for certain enemies being more difficult for certain builds. That makes building your character have consequences. But when the enemy in question is a primary and repeating enemy throughout an entire DLC, it just kind of feels unfair for them to invalidate my playstyle. Most of my damage is tied up in stealth skills that I cannot use against these enemies, so I'm just at a massive disadvantage. The only way I found to trick them was to use the invisibility star power right before they spawned, and I could only really guess at when that might be, so it wasn't a reliable solution. Another way that Shattered Space managed to be an improvement over the base game was in the form of more handcrafted dungeons like this one. A symptom of Starfield's overuse of procedurally generated planets is that you often got sent to procedurally generated dungeons too, which are never as interesting as ones that were designed with some intentionality. Dungeon design is one of Bethesda's strong suits, and it really showed through with many of the dungeons throughout the DLC. There's a story to discover, a puzzle to solve, hell, just something cool to look at in the majority of the dungeons on Dazra, and I really enjoyed that. At the dam, I found some talkative ghosts that used their freedom of speech to tell me to fuck off. I ignored them by exercising my right to bear arms. While exploring, I found audio logs detailing everything that Anasko Varun did here that was meant to stay secret. Thankfully, only I found these completely unnecessary logs and no one else. Dul'kehf sent me here looking for something called a vortex interlock, and the dam is powered by some of these devices. The interlocks are able to harness vortex energy, and it's a bunch of sci-fi bullshit that doesn't really matter. It's a special thing that does special things, and that's why Anasko needed it and why it might help me. The interlocks are also keeping the ghosts alive. Turns out they have regular human bodies sitting in tanks, and their ghost state and ghost powers are being sustained by the interlock. The dam originally had 3 interlocks. Anasko took one for his experiments. I need to take one in case it might be useful, and I'm given an option to take the 3rd. Taking it would kill the ghosts and stop the dam from functioning, leading to the farms outside getting flooded. I didn't really see a reason to take the last one, so I fought my way out without it. In a lot of games, the decision to take or not take the extra interlock would have meaningful ramifications on the story and future events. In Starfield, it does absolutely nothing. The only result to your decision is that the farms outside will get destroyed and ruin the lives of a bunch of characters you know nothing about and have no attachment to. Basically, the choice is be an asshole for no reason or don't. Someone got paid to write that. I took the interlock back to Ekris and he promptly told me he didn't need it without even trying to experiment with it. Cool, dude. Really tried your hardest, huh? I was ready to jump into whatever the next house needed help with, but unfortunately, the magic snake lady from the magic snake cave suddenly thinks I need to go to another magic cave on the other side of the Citadel because she thinks a Nazca will be there. Why? I don't know. The big snake told her. Ekris thinks this is nonsense, and so do I, so I told her I wouldn't go. In response, she told me to come back when I'm ready. And that's it. You can't continue the quest line if you don't go to the magic cave. Ekris seems to believe that our work can't continue until I do, but why? What bearing does the magic snake lady's ramblings have on my ability to talk to the other houses? He says that it would be faster to go to the cave than to keep arguing about it, and that makes no sense. How is going on a several-hour excursion faster than just ignoring her? The only reason I'm being given here is that the snake lady believes me meeting with Anasco will somehow prevent him from doing something that would lead to the deaths of basically everyone. But she's basing that belief on nothing. She just thinks it will happen because of her religious beliefs. I don't believe in her shit, so why should I have to listen to her? How about you let me ignore her and show me the negative results of my decision? You can't even ignore her if you try. The other houses won't talk to you until you go to the cave. This situation harkens back to my issue with the base game and how the game forces you to join Constellation and how the DLC forces you to join House Va'ruun. There's a concept in improv acting called yes and thinking. The idea is that when one actor asks a question of another, they should not just say yes or no, because that halts the flow of the scene. They should say yes or no, and then say something else to expand on the situation. In terms of game design, when you are presenting a player with a choice, none of your options should lead to dead ends, at least when we're talking about main story content. Yes and no are not good enough responses to a player's actions. You should always be prepared to lead them on from there. If you really need a player to do something and they tell you no, I won't, you should have a response prepared for why they need to do it. Bethesda is not prepared for this. Bethesda is the actor that says no and then just stares at you vacantly, waiting for you to play along. Oh, you don't want to join Constellation? Okay, see you when you want to. Don't want to join House Va'ruun? Okay, let me know when you do. Don't want to go to the Magic Cave because I have given you literally no actual reason to go there and no reason that not doing so would halt your current progression? That sucks. You can't do anything else until you do. Look, I really hate to keep using the term RPG to describe Starfield because I really don't see it as one, but that is what Bethesda calls it and how they marketed it, so I'm going to play by their rules. This genre has its roots in tabletop RPGs like D&D. Imagine if you told your DM, I don't want to go to the Magic Cave, and they just looked at you and said, okay, I guess we'll stop playing until you decide to. It is the job of the DM to lead their players to the Magic Cave by creating a compelling reason for it to happen. A DM that just ceases to function when the player doesn't do what they want is a bad DM, a poor improv actor, and exactly what Bethesda looks for in a quest designer. It's just terribly uncreative, as I see it. Deciding not to join House Va'ruun should not just end the quest line, it should lead to a version of the quest line where they let you help anyway. However, since you didn't join, Dazra's population treats you with mistrust and prejudice. Parts of the city can be blocked off to you, stores won't talk to you. It's more difficult to convince people to help you. Considering most of the city was destroyed by their own leader's experiment, there could be a faction of disillusioned House Va'ruun members that are more ready to work with you on account of your willingness to question the council's leadership. That's yes and thinking. That's responding to a player's decisions by expanding the story. It doesn't even need to be as complex or interesting as that. Marlborough could just respond to you refusing to join by telling you that the others won't accept you being in the city unless you join. And then he could give you the option to join on paper. Just
Tell everyone you joined. You don't have to believe in it or have any obligation to stick around once this is all over. It's not that hard to work around this problem. Bethesda is just lazy. Well, since I had no choice, I headed to the magic cave, and lo and behold, there's Anasko just hanging out. You would think that he would take the opportunity to communicate with someone to impart some crucial knowledge that could lead to his rescue and the end of this disaster, but no, this conversation was completely pointless. He just told me that he's still in the Scaled Citadel and then fucked off again. Thanks, Anasko. Big help, buddy. What do you think about this wacky turn of events, Andrasia?
What did you need?
Since that nonsense is out of the way now, we can get back to working on the houses. Now, I said we were going in order from least to most insane, and this next house is a big jump up on that scale. House Dul'kehf's reason for not helping was totally understandable, but House Kadik's? Let's just go over it first. The Kadikis were supposed to provide a scientist to help Ekris with popping the Citadel's bubble, but just kinda didn't, and didn't explain why. Since I came to find out, their elder decided to enlighten me so I might help them. She explained to me that the scientist and several of their house's people have been taken hostage by zealots that are now trying to use them for negotiations. And they didn't bother to explain this situation to the council because it's none of their business. Somehow. This explanation is just her being dodgy, though. Each house has an elder that leads the house, and a member that serves on the council that leads House Va'ruun. Marlborough is House Dul'kehf's counselor. And before I head out to dissolve the hostage situation, Kadik's counselor stops me with a request. She explains that the real reason the elder didn't tell the council about what's going on is that House Kadik is actually working with and funding the zealots and doesn't want the council to find out. But wait, the person telling me this is a counselor, so doesn't the council already know? You'd think so, but the counselor has unilaterally decided that it's not a big deal and that the rest of the council doesn't need to know. Which kind of defeats the whole fucking purpose of having a council in the first place. It's also so hypocritical when she previously admonished Marlborough for letting me join House Va'ruun without consulting the council. You got no room to talk, lady. Even worse, she's against this whole arrangement. She doesn't want them working with zealots, but since she's not the house's elder, she doesn't get to make that decision. So she both can't change the situation herself and won't get the council to step in and get involved. So she's got a wonderful solution in mind. Kill everyone. The counselor wants me to go to where the hostages are being held and just murder all of them. She figures that if all of the hostages die, we can pin it on the zealots, and that will convince the elder that they're too wacky to work with, and she'll finally cut ties with them. This makes no fucking sense! For starters, why would the zealots just kill all of their hostages? If they did that, they would lose all of their bargaining power. The counselor attempts to hand-wave this by saying that the zealots are just a little goofy, so it could totally happen, but spoiler alert, in a conversation with the scientist later, even she agrees that the zealots would never kill her because they need her. It just makes no sense for them to do that. And second, let's imagine how this scenario would go down when I got back. Hey everyone, it's me, the new guy in town that no one knows anything about. I went to rescue those hostages you mentioned, but man, wouldn't you know it, the zealots just killed them all for a meme. Yeah, really sad, yeah, I know. Oh, also, I killed all of them after, so you can't interrogate any of them or confirm what I'm saying. You just gotta take my word on it since you all know and trust me so well. They're just gonna blame me for it! Why wouldn't they? I would blame me for it! Nothing any of these people are doing makes any sense. What good is your house's pride if people are endangered by it? Go to the council, fess up, face the music, and get the help you need to rescue the hostages. And let's not forget, this community just faced a massive disaster that wiped out probably 80% of their city and population. And they want to lose more lives over this nonsense? Get it together, people! I can hear there's like a group of people off that away, I think. There's a fair amount of echoing around here. I don't even think they're talking that loud. They're yelling a little bit here and there, but they're not talking that loud, and I can still hear them. So the fact that I just like screamed out that whole line, I think they
good chance they probably heard me and are, I imagine, quite confused by what the fuck I'm talking about. 42.
I decided that a better course of action would be to go to the council myself and snitch on House Kadik for the sake of the greater good. So tell me, if you watched my last video on Starfield, or really if you know anything about how this game is written and designed, do you think I was actually able to do that? Really, this is my fault. I should have known by now that if Bethesda doesn't give you a quest marker for it, you just can't do something. At no point during or after this mission are you able to expose what House Kadik did. And why? Because the character Bethesda wrote for me is apparently altruistic enough to join a cult in order to help people, but not altruistic enough to be a snitch. Got it. Makes sense. So, I headed to the Zealots' hideout with the intention of saving the hostages, and this is where I have to issue a couple corrections. In my original video series, I had a lengthy section about stealth in Starfield, where I complained about how it basically just isn't functional at all, and that Bethesda designed the game to be antithetical to that playstyle. And this was definitely the most heavily criticized part of my video, and for fair reasons. While I strive to make my videos as accurate as possible, mistakes inevitably slip through the cracks, especially when we're talking about the scales of videos that I work on. We're talking about scripts in the range of tens of thousands of words, and I don't have proofreaders or editors, so shit happens. That's not meant as an excuse though. I do my best not to let it happen. The big mistake I made with the stealth section of my video is that I just didn't understand Starfield's stealth mechanics, which is crazy to imagine after 70 odd hours of playtime on a stealth build. How did that happen? Let's go over some of the things I missed. The big thing is that wearing a spacesuit makes you more noticeable to enemies. I never took off my suit while I was playing, so that wasn't helping me at all. My spacesuit was also probably kind of stinky from being worn all the time. That might not have helped either. Having more items in your inventory also apparently makes you noisier, and I'm a little loot goblin, so that hurt too. Lighting affects your ability to stay hidden, so it's best to stick to the shadows. Some commenters pointed out that I wasn't really doing that. Finally, turrets use infrared to see enemies, so the invisibility power doesn't work on them. I showed a clip of me being noticed while invisible and acted like it was the game's fault, but I was being noticed by a turret, so it actually makes sense. Lastly, I complained that enemies would shoot at you before they even properly detected you, but they actually do this because they are shooting in the general direction of where they think a threat is. You can tell by how inaccurate their shots are. And now that I realize this, I actually like it a lot because it's a pretty sensible reaction. Wow, that's a lot. How did I play the entire game without understanding these basic mechanics? Jeez, I'm a real dumbass. I shouldn't even be making videos like these. I should probably just delete the whole fucking channel since I'm such a moron.
All right, this shouldn't take too long. Let's just go channel, advanced, remove YouTube content. Yep, want to permanently delete everything. Let's go ahead and just check those and get it done. Well, before I do that, there is one thing I should mention.
The game doesn't explain any of this! Nowhere in the whole fucking game does it tell you that wearing a spacesuit makes you more noticeable. Not one fucking time. No stealth tutorial, no loading screen tip, nothing. And I'm the dumbass?
Every take that I do of this, I'm like petrified I'm going to accidentally hit delete because that is like the final step. There's no other check. It would all be gone.
Some people tried to claim that I should have known this because stealth operates the same as it does in Fallout and Elder Scrolls, but a couple problems with that. For starters, am I really so dumb for not seeing heavy armor and a spacesuit as the same thing? I viewed my spacesuit as my primary form of protection, not a stronger form of protection. The clothing has very low defense stats. I didn't view it as light versus heavy armor. I saw it as clothes and armor. In Elder Scrolls, you don't just take off your armor to stealth, you wear lighter stuff. You don't have to unequip things to sneak around. And second, why on earth should I know that it works this way in Starfield just because it works like that in their other games? Oh yeah, guys, you can't jump in Dark Souls, so obviously you can't do it in Sekiro or Armored Core either. Obviously. Every game from a developer operates under the same rules. We all know that. And what is the person playing Starfield as their first Bethesda game supposed to do, exactly? It was a failing of my video that I did not know these things. I should have done better research to confirm what I thought I knew, and I didn't. That said, it wouldn't have changed anything about my experience with the game.
I don't use guides or walkthroughs for games that I play because I find the experience of learning about a game's mechanics myself enjoyable. I might use guides for a second playthrough, but seldom for a first unless it's absolutely necessary for some reason. The conclusions I drew would be different, but the experience would remain the same. And any of the delusional commenters claiming that my video is somehow wrong in every regard because I messed this section up are straight up coping.
After these revelations, I thought a lot about what makes stealth work in a game, and I've come to believe that a large part of it is the game's ability to convey information to the player. I mentioned the lack of a stealth tutorial in Starfield, but it doesn't necessarily need one. It just needs to be able to teach you, somehow, through gameplay, what exactly you're screwing up.
Many games will use detection meters, noise meters, vignettes around the screen to indicate light level in order to teach you what mistakes you're making when you're getting caught. Starfield has a detection meter, but that's it. And it's virtually useless due to the speed at which you get noticed, giving you no time to reflect on what's happening, and giving no indication as to who is noticing you or what direction you're being seen from.
The game isn't doing anything to guide you to understanding its systems, it just expects you to know. This information doesn't need to be spoon-fed to the player, but no indication whatsoever doesn't work very well.
I brought up stealth now because this zealot hideout was my first opportunity to actually try out what I'd learned. Up until now, I had been fighting phantoms and weird bug creatures, both of which spawn in magically, completely invalidating stealth as a playstyle. In this dungeon, though, I was finally facing regular human enemies. I made it my mission to test out everything I had learned and to get through as stealthily as possible. If I screwed up, I would reload and start over, which isn't something I would normally do, but again, I was running a test here. And after going through this process, I have come to the conclusion that stealth is still fucking broken. The first big problem I ran into is that I just kept forgetting to unequip my spacesuit. It sucks such ass that you have to manually do that in order to play this way. There's a toggle in the menu to make your spacesuit invisible when you're in a breathable environment for roleplay reasons, but they should really just have it automatically unequip it entirely. It's so irritating to unequip or re-equip over and over while playing. Second problem was Andrasia. This one is a special shout out to all those Bethesda NPC lovers that pushed me to run around with a companion. For some godforsaken reason, Andrasia has her own unique detection and can get caught by herself regardless of whatever's going on with me. So anytime I wanted to stealth the dungeon, I'd have to tell her to wait outside a safe distance away. Realistic? Yes. Irritating, annoying, and lacking quality of life? Absolutely. Most games like this rely on your detection alone and basically just ignore companions for stealth, and that's significantly better than this shit. Lastly, not wearing my spacesuit did fucking nothing, despite how certain commenters espoused it as the solution to my stealth problem. I have countless examples of how not wearing a spacesuit seemed to change nothing at all about the rate at which I would get detected. It just did not help. I had to reload countless times to get through this place fully stealthed. It was absurd. I was able to sneak around more effectively thanks to what I learned, but look, I'm sure there's some super meta way to ace stealth using a dozen spacesuit modifications and a deep understanding of the game's systems, but for an average player, this is just not functional. Since we're on the subject of something I got wrong, I want to quickly offer some thoughts or other corrections that surfaced from my last video. Another thing I got wrong was about the identity of Keeper Achilles. In my video, I asked what event had turned the Keeper into the Hunter and expressed frustration that it wasn't explored further. However, what I missed is that it was actually the other way around. Keeper Achilles is a version of the Hunter that grew tired of the hunt for the rocks and settled down in my universe. Something I realized about myself recently is that when I believe a story lacks depth, I stop looking for it. So since the fact that the Keeper was once the Hunter isn't really told to you explicitly, and I didn't view Starfield's story as containing any real depth, I didn't pick up on it. In a way, I'm thankful for having made this mistake because now I know that I do that and I can do my best to avoid it, as I've done in this video. I mistakenly said that long-range communication isn't addressed in the game. That was wrong. It's more or less explained to be impossible during a story mission that I just forgot about. Let's see, what else? Oh, I incorrectly believe that the Mantis spacesuit gives you the chameleon perk. It turns out the Mantis suit has randomized perks, making it no different from any other spacesuit in the game, and a massive disappointment. I apologize for praising it. I made it to the end of the Zealot hideout, and all told, there were 8 hostages, including the scientist Ekris needed. House Kadik was willing to sacrifice 8 of their people instead of just owning up to their fuck-up. I don't even think there are 8 people in their actual house. Okay, next up we've got House Veth'all, and these guys are a real doozy. House Dul'kehf wanted to help, but got ignored. House Kadik couldn't send their scientist because she was taken hostage, at their own fault. Still, it's not like these houses weren't helping simply because they didn't want to. House Veth'all was supposed to provide access to the power grid for Ekris' device when it was ready, but they didn't because the House Elder's son doesn't believe in God. That's it.
After the disaster, the Elder's son questioned Anasko Va'ruun and all of House Va'ruun's faith in the Big Snake, and then he ran away. And for that reason, the Elder will not provide access to the power grid. And you might be wondering how those two things are related. Maybe the son holds the authority over the power grid, maybe he stole a key that provides the access, perhaps he sabotaged the power grid on his way out. Nope, none of that. It's not related at all. There's exactly 0 reason that the son's disappearance would prevent access to the power grid. The Elder is just a hard-ass fanatic that won't help his people until his house is in order. People are dying, actively, from phantom attacks and a lack of resources, and this dumbass won't provide life-saving assistance because his son won't read the Bible.
The Elder would have solved this problem himself, but he didn't want it leaking that his son was a doubter, and he didn't have a trustworthy third party to count on to take care of it. Until I came along. And he knows he can believe in me because I keep questioning everything he says and calling him an idiot for what he's doing. He asked me to go and kill his heretic son. This might make a tiny bit of sense if his son was like a violent heretic who damaged the power grid and hurt people, but no, his only crime is wanting a say in his life's direction. I feel like I don't even need to use my mock rage to make a point about how ridiculous this is. Like, it kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it? I found the kid. He was relatively easy to track down since he left behind audio logs detailing where he was going for no reason. Maybe not the best idea when you're going into hiding, but what do I know? He confirmed that his only motivation was a desire for freedom, so I helped him to fake his death and disappear. What do you think about this turn of events, Andresia? With all of the house's assistance, we were finally ready to crack the Citadel egg, or eat it, I guess, because snakes eat eggs, you know, it doesn't really work, does it? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Ekris shot a big laser at the Citadel, and I headed out by myself with no backup besides Andresia to solve everyone else's problems, as always. The Citadel is a pretty cool looking place, but a pain in the ass is a dungeon. I don't want to rehash this point though, so I'll just go over it quickly. Phantom enemies mean no stealth. Stealth suck in the Citadel just as it does in the rest of the game. There's another area that is just robot enemies and cameras to avoid, but the cameras seem to use infrared just like the turrets, so invisibility isn't an option and they detect you too quickly for you to react and change course. Thanks, Bethesda. Eventually, I made my way to where Anasko was holed up and found out what this was all about. It turns out that while the death and destruction was an accident, much of what happened was entirely intentional. But to understand why, we need to talk about House Va'ruun lore a little bit. Jinan Va'ruun, Anasko's ancestor and the founder of House Va'ruun, was a pretty normal guy. Until one day he was on a ship during a grav jump during which he claims to have seen and spoken to the Big Snake. The Big Snake told him that it created the galaxy before going into a dormant state, but would one day return and claim its place as ruler of the galaxy. Only those that were loyal to the Big Snake would survive this event, which is why Jinan began spreading the Good Snake word. Part of that spread was the Snake Crusade, during which House Va'ruun went around just killing anyone that they met in order to prepare the universe for the Big Snake's return. The Snake Crusade ended when Jinan died and his son took over. The zealots we've run into are vestiges of the Crusade that believe it never should have ended. The Snake Crusade and the Zealots are both reasons that basically everyone else hates House Va'ruun and thinks they're weird. Anasko reveals that the explosion that wiped out Dazra was an accident, but the Phantoms were not. It was his intention to create nearly invulnerable soldiers with the power to teleport through space, and to use them to restart the Snake Crusade. However, in the middle of their experiment, the vortex interlock broke down, causing the explosion. With the interlock that I took from the dam, the experiment can be continued and completed, which is, of course, not a good thing. I asked Anasko why he wants to restart the crusade, and he told me that everyone hates them anyway, so why shouldn't they become exactly what they think House Va'ruun is, and clear the way for the big snake? But this motivation is terrible.
You killed thousands during the last crusade. The Zealots have killed more since. Doing another crusade would only confirm the galaxy's bias against you. His little speech about making everyone pay for how House Va'ruun has been treated only makes sense if that treatment was unjustified. Look, you should never hate an entire group of people because of the actions of some or even most of them. 1,000 evil House Va'ruun members doesn't justify treating one of them that has done nothing wrong badly. But they haven't done anything to show people that House Va'ruun isn't exactly what they think. Bethesda wants to have their "I wish I was the monster you think I am" moment, but that scene works because Tyrion was unjustly prosecuted and had his actions misconstrued to make him look as bad as possible. It doesn't work if Tyrion is exactly as bad as he's made out to be, as is the case with House Va'ruun.
I, of course, told Anasko to fuck off, broke his little machine, fought some zealots, blew up the Citadel, and passed out. Once awake, I had to explain what happened to the council. They were pretty upset that I didn't save Anasko, but they got over it pretty quickly and decided that one of them should be the new speaker. Which of course means they look to me to decide who it should be, because these people are entirely incapable of getting anything done without me. Except for Ekris. He's a legend, honestly. I decided that Marlborough and House Dul'kehf should be the new leaders because they're the least insane. And that ought to be it. But then the Magic Snake Lady spoke up, even though she's not a council member, not a house elder, basically just in charge of the Magic Snake Cave. She decides to weigh in and expresses that she knows Anasko wanted to restart the Snake Crusade somehow. This leads to the councilors disagreeing over whether or not they should go off crusading, and since they can't agree, it's up to me again, because these people are fucking useless. I, of course, told them not to do it, and they listened. And that's it. It's all over. What do you think about this, Andrasia?
Yes?
While I appreciate Andrasia's deep insight, I have a lot of thoughts about this entire sequence of events that I want to go over. I want to start with one really big picture thing, and that's House Va'ruun's portrayal throughout this story. The promise of Shattered Space was that we would finally get the chance to get to know House Va'ruun, who were so mysterious and absent in the base game. And the way I see it, there were 4 directions Bethesda could have gone with that premise. Number 1. House Va'ruun introduces themselves as not being as bad as we think and proves that to be true through their actions. Number 2. House Va'ruun makes a poor impression that makes you believe they're as bad as you think, but ultimately prove themselves to be more honorable than first believed. Number 3. House Va'ruun appears to be as bad as you believe, but are written in a way that makes their beliefs somewhat understandable. They occupy a moral gray area, but their actions can be interpreted as good. Number 4. House Va'ruun appears to be evil and prove themselves to be exactly as bad as you think, leaving no interpretation other than that they are the bad guys. Bethesda took route number 4, and I think that's a shame because it's really fucking boring. You're given 2 options at the end of the story here, both of which involve the Crusade. There's the decision to finish or destroy Anasko's experiment, and the question about restarting the Crusade after the Citadel. And both times, I wondered who the fuck would choose to help them restart the Snake Crusade. I mean, it's great that it's an option, rather than Bethesda forcing me down a certain path, but Marlborough told me at the beginning of the DLC that the Zealots I had met before weren't representative of their people or their beliefs, and that was just a lie. House Va'ruun is exactly as crazy as I've always believed.
There's no justification for what they're doing, no gray area they're operating in. This is decidedly a bad thing to do, and I can only see someone role-playing an actively evil character siding with them. The decision at the dam to take or not take the extra interlock is a miniature version of the penultimate decision you have to make with this story. Do you want to be an asshole for no reason whatsoever, or not do that?
This story isn't doing anything to convince you the House of Rune is actually noble or just. Nothing about how this story is written makes them relatable. There's no attempt to make you see their side of things or to come around to their way of thinking. At the beginning of the video, I said, my perception of House of Rune is that they are fanatic snake worshippers that are out to eradicate the non-believers. I don't really know much about them beyond that. This is still basically true at the end of the story. If you didn't side with House of Rune before you joined them, you're not going to change your mind by the end of the DLC. This is very black and white. House of Rune are bad people doing bad things, and siding with them makes you a bad person. Marlboro being a congenial fellow doesn't really change that. These people are ready to sacrifice 8 people instead of admitting to fucking up. This guy wants to kill his son for questioning God. This dude wants to massacre the galaxy because people were mean to him. If you think they're fanatical cultists before you meet them, their actions are unlikely to change your opinion. To me, that's really boring. There's another major problem I have with this story which is linked to the ending. These assholes want to start a snake crusade? Right now? Really? You and what army, dipshit? 80% of your population exploded! That 80% figure is made up on my part. You're never told how many people they lost, but the point still stands. You can see on the map the epicenter of the explosion and extrapolate from there that the majority of their people and city was wiped out. Yet the story never really takes this situation seriously. Sure, the entire premise of the story revolves around this failed experiment and its aftermath, but you wouldn't really know that they lost most of their people by how they behave. Go kill 8 hostages. Go kill my son. Let's start a war with the entire galaxy. These aren't the actions of people who lost most of their population. They place such a low value on the lives of their remaining people. They're willing to sacrifice them with such reckless abandon. How are they even considering doing another snake crusade right now? How can they possibly expect that to work with how few people they have left? Maybe they could have done it with Inosko's phantoms, but after I destroyed them? No chance, little bro! I also have to question how many important people made it through this. House Dul'kehf's elder is the only person who is new to his position. All of the other elders and counselors held their positions before the explosion. Marlboro says that they are only what remains of the High Council, but there's no mention of having lost any members. They only have 5 chairs around their table. If one of them was occupied by Inosko, then we're only missing 1 counselor. And who were they? Is there a 4th house that was entirely wiped out alongside their elder and counselor? Did one of the houses unfairly have an extra person on the council? Is the Snake Lady the 4th person? There's a lot of unanswered questions here, but I believe that by sheer coincidence, the vast majority of House Va'ruun's leadership happened to survive the disaster. That seems like a big mistake to me. A lot of the infighting and unwillingness to cooperate in this story could be explained by new leaders getting shoved into the role unexpectedly after the previous leaders died during the disaster. Instead, the disaster is just a backdrop to explain the supernatural shit going on in this story, but is otherwise ignored. Hell, even the supernatural stuff isn't explained very well because why can't I talk to Inosko? No one else can. Why do you think I can? No, really, what do you think it is? Just think about the most obvious possible answer and I'll tell you if you're right. Yes, you're correct. I can talk to Inosko because I touched the funny rock. When I was playing the DLC, I wrote in my notes, apparently only I can hear the phantoms. Perhaps the star powers give me that ability. It has to be the most obvious and least interesting answer, but it's worse because the story never actually acknowledges this. The only reason anyone knows this is because Barrett can also hear the ghosts if you've done the quest in the base game where he gets a star power. None of the other companions can hear the ghosts, so we only know this is the reason by process of elimination. They never actually explained why this is the case in the actual story. How are the rocks related to Inosko's experiment? Do the star powers harness vortex energy the same way the interlocks do? I don't know. Could be. Bethesda didn't care to enlighten me. And hey, maybe the goal is for them to build some mystery around this so they can reveal more information in the next DLC. But if that's the case, they didn't actually do anything to build that mystery, they just didn't address it!
After going through all of this nonsense, Shattered Space made me realize one of the major things that makes it so hard for me to get into Bethesda stories, and that's the human element. In order to illustrate what I'm talking about, we should talk about Andrasia. I have to admit that I lied to you. I did not bring Andrasia along with the simple motivation to get to know her. After the criticism I received in my last video, I did think it would be best to bring someone with me to see if spending time with them would change how I feel about the companions and the prospect of losing one of them during the main story. However, my decision for that person to be Andrasia was not a coincidence, because Andrasia is not just a member of Constellation, she is also a member of House Va'ruun.
Now, you aren't supposed to know that when you first meet her, but it's not exactly a well-kept secret. I figured it out long before I spent time with her. I decided to bring her with because I wanted to see how Bethesda would implement her into Shattered Space's story, and I think you probably have some idea of how that went.
Yes?
By developing a relationship with Andrasia, she eventually reveals her membership with House Va'ruun, and explains that she's essentially a spy sent by the Snakes to keep an eye on Constellation and make sure that they don't accidentally discover the Va'ruun homeworld during all of their exploring of the galaxy. As a result, she has a unique situation as a member of House Va'ruun, where she's never supposed to break character. In other words, this explains why she acts like she's never seen Dazra before when you get there. Because of her role as an undercover agent, she's not supposed to act like she knows anything about House Va'ruun, even when you're standing in their capital city. However, I find this explanation inadequate. Shocking, I know. Even if Andrasia is trained to act like she has no involvement with House Va'ruun, what about everybody on Dazra that she knew before she left? Are they trained to act like they've never met her before, even if she returns to Dazra, which she was never supposed to do? Why would she need to keep her cover up after I joined House Va'ruun? Shouldn't they be able to acknowledge her presence once I'm one of their trusted family members?
Alright, maybe they still can't because I just joined and they're still gauging my allegiance, but what about after Andrasia and I grow closer and she reveals her alignment to me? What reason is there to keep acting like she's not there at that point? Doesn't Andrasia have any family or friends that she may have lost due to the disaster that she wants to go and check on now that she doesn't have to keep her secret? Well, if she does, she never spoke up about it. And it's not the only thing she kept her mouth shut about.
Andrasia has nothing of value to say when you join House Va'ruun. No thoughts about the prospect of sacrificing hostages for the sake of a house's honor. No opinion on your decision to allow the atheist son to live and go free. Your actions and the actions of others throughout the story never prompt her to question or assert her allegiance. She's just kinda there. And that's ultimately emblematic of how characters are handled in Bethesda's stories. Bethesda is, more often than not, much more interested in telling a story of a world than a story of characters in a world. Many characters are nothing more than their positions in a society. Who is Marlborough outside of the council? What are his interests? Does he have a spouse? Children? What are his passions outside of herpetology? This is never explained, and so as far as I or anyone else is concerned, Marlborough is just the guy on the council who wanted your help.
Let's double check my work here. Let's see what the Starfield wiki has to say about Marlborough. Malabor Dul'kehf is a member of the High Council of Dazra and head of House Dul'kehf. Okay, that's wrong. Malabor is not the head of House Dul'kehf. That's the elder. Let's try a different wiki. Let's see. Extra Life doesn't have a page for Malabor, so maybe fandom? Nope, they don't have a page either. Oh, Starfield database, they gotta have something. Starfield's Malabor Dul'kehf is one of several Starfield NPCs you can encounter during exploration of the settled systems. Malabor Dul'kehf is affiliated with no specific faction. No specific faction? What? Is this website AI generated? Who is this guy? Is this Mr. Starfield DB himself?
Okay, the Starfield wikis are terrible because no one cares about this game, so maybe that was a bad example, but really, I think it does showcase to some extent that Malibor is not a character. He is a position. He's a counselor. He doesn't exist outside of that designation. This is something that applies to virtually every character in Starfield and most Bethesda characters in general.
There's a reason that people remember Martin. Oblivion spoilers here for a second. He was a priest, unexpectedly pushed into the role of an emperor during a crisis, who stepped up and dealt with it. His uncertainty about his ability to do this transformed over time to a conviction to do it at all costs. His prior knowledge of magic in Daedra came in handy to accomplish that task, and he made the ultimate sacrifice to stop Mehrunes Dagon's invasion. Martin was not just the new emperor, he was a pious man with an interest in books and a past involving Daedric worship. He had passions and convictions. He was not just some quest-issuing bystander, he was an absolute legend. That's something that is sorely lacking in Bethesda's writing, the human element, the characters, the people, how these events affect them, how they feel, how they change as a result of what happens. Andreja was my partner throughout this entire story that should have been deeply connected to her, yet she has next to nothing to contribute to it. Hans Capon is not just the heir to Ratai, he is Henry's friend. Sometimes they fight and they have to make up. Your decisions affect your relationship with him. He's immature and spoiled, and those aspects of his character affect his ability to uphold his position. You aren't just told these things are things you feel. These are things that are conveyed to you by the story. He has both a position and a character that influences the story's events. That's the human element. That's the aspect of writing that prevents Bethesda's stories from being in any way relatable or memorable, because Bethesda does not write characters, they write positions. Counselor, elder, engineer, snake lady, scientist, companion who is also a House Harun member. With nothing but their title, you easily describe a character's entire role in the story. And that's what I mean when I say that Bethesda writes stories about worlds and not stories about characters within worlds. They write lore, they write the setting, the backdrop, but no real story within that. You think people care so deeply about The Witcher because of Novigrad? Or the concept of a Witcher? No, they care about Geralt and Ciri and their stories. Do people show up to God of War because of the Norse or Greek mythology? Or because of the relationships and stories between those gods? Or simply because hitting things with Kratos' blades is fun? You can make a fun game with a lacking story, but you can't make a boring game with a lacking story because then there's no motivation to play it. What am I here for? What am I going to see? What am I going to gain from this experience? Fun is the bare minimum. If all I get out of a game is fun, then I am satisfied. That's why I enjoy Borderlands 4, or Oblivion, or any number of other slop games. Starfield can't even manage that, so to have a boring story on top of boring gameplay leaves me nothing to latch on to. I want to repeat that I recognize that a flaw of mine is that I tend not to recognize the depth in a story that I view as lacking depth, and I really tried my best to avoid doing that here. I recognize that many of the things I called out as ridiculous do serve a purpose. Veth'all's elder's desire to have his son killed is an unrealistic reaction for a rational person, but he's not meant to be a rational person. This is meant to portray the fanaticism inherent in House Va'ruun society. In that sense, it's doing a good job, but it's just so fucking boring. We already knew House Va'ruun was full of lunatics before we got the chance to get to know them. In what way is this behavior shocking or interesting? How does it expand on House Va'ruun's story? You're beating a dead horse here instead of surprising me or engaging my interest.
I really tried, you know? I'm sure some of you won't believe me, but there are aspects of Starfield that make me want to like it more than I do. I love space as a setting. I love Starfield's cassette futurist technology design. I like the visual design of the user interface, even though I find the usability rather lackluster. I like how it feels to shoot the guns. I love the dungeon design during the few opportunities I get to explore a handcrafted dungeon instead of a procedurally generated one. I want this to be a game that I like, but there's just nothing there. And no, I can't say that going through Andreja's whole companion questline gave me something to care about. It didn't change my opinion about the companions or make me care that much about her. If Andrasia died instead of Sam, I wouldn't feel any different about it because Andrasia is barely a character, and certainly not one I care about.
I really wanted Bethesda to learn from their mistakes and do better with Shattered Space. I wanted them to delay the DLC until they could rewrite and redo the whole thing with the player's criticism in mind. I wanted them to hire a writer that knows how to write a story and not lore. Instead, Emil got a House Va'ruun tattoo because he's so proud of his work with them. I do genuinely believe what I said, that Shattered Space is some of Starfield's best content, but that is purely because they curated an actual map and world for me to explore. That minor improvement is the singular reason I feel the way that I do. Because ultimately, Shattered Space is more of the same with the exception of that tiny addition. The gameplay is still boring. The writing is still too focused on the world to tell an actual story. The promise of House Va'ruun is shallow and disappointing. The one small way that Bethesda iterated on Starfield was the addition of an actual location to explore, and they accomplished that very poorly. Bethesda learned nothing, and I can't say that I have a lot of faith in Starfield's next DLC, Terran Armada.
Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, consider dropping a like or leaving a comment. Let me know what you thought. I really appreciate that. I want to mention that this video was filmed and recorded and scripted, everything, basically everything, before the Terran Armada and Free Lanes update was announced or released. So if I have to eat crow after that update, we'll cross that bridge in a follow-up video because I am going to play that stuff. So maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe Bethesda is going to make a massive change to the game and it'll finally be like a game that is solid and really fun to play. I don't know. I don't have high expectations, but we'll see. There's a good chance I'll make a video about that too. So look forward to it. I do want to mention that you could have seen this video a week early on Patreon, just $5 a month, and you get access to all kinds of stuff like weekly updates on what I'm working on, written reviews on things I'm watching or playing, exclusive videos occasionally, including a review of Oblivion, if you're interested in seeing that kind of thing. Monthly Patreon streams, behind the scenes live streams. There's a lot of stuff on there. And I want to give a massive thanks to all of my Patreon subscribers, especially my gamers, Grant Harsh, Sam, Wanma Dauffaus, I apologize if I pronounced that wrong, and Cum Dragoon. I'm not worried about pronouncing that one wrong. And all of my Sims, Bill Nye the Bounty Guy, Marzak the Mad, B&J, Belgara, David D, Ramu Nerd, Skippy, Degenerate451, A Yellow Line, Bork Laser 9000, Ryan Hosford, Matsugen, Ko Rosinante, and of course, Doug Dimmadome, owner of the Dimsdale Dimmadome. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate the support. And I appreciate you for watching and making it all the way to the end. I hope you look forward to my next video, and I'll catch you next time. Thank you. See you around.